what you choose to look at, therefore, is tremendously important. Attention, if you remember, is a choice. And the next, we've got 3 presentations now in quick succession, all about that selectivity in choice. And the first one is not a presentation, is a chat. We have Anna Forbes, newly arrived at InSkin, and she's talking to Rob Gold of Merkle about the issues that have been raised today and basically what we can do about it. So off we go. Thanks very much.
Hi guys, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? Cool, thank you. Real humans, that's what we're here for, hurrah! Not videos and recordings, wonderful. So we're on a bit of a quest in advertising, aren't we, to kind of figure out that sort of Mad Men saying, if you like, of I know advertising works, I just don't know which half. And digital allowed us to enter into a brave new world of metrics that really help drive short-term performance. And what we're seeing now is a new moment in time in advertising where we're moving away from those initial digital short-term metrics and we're looking at things that are more closely linked to attention, creativity, and real business outcomes. And we've been talking about that a lot over the last 2 days on this attention stage. Thank you, Lumen. So, yes, as we evolve and as we move on from these short-term performance-based clicks into this attention and creativity world, and at InSkin we're obviously incredibly proud of the amazing work that we do with our high-impact digital formats that are very beautiful. And if you missed the presentation earlier from Julia and Dom, you'll have missed the big reveal that these formats deliver 20 times the attention of standard formats, which is pretty compelling. So we're evolving, we're moving away from these cheaper, more short-term metrics, which is fantastic. Now, unfortunately, digital has created a little bit of a headache for itself in that we've kind of relied on these old school metrics, and digital has therefore sadly got a bit of a moniker around it of being a performance vehicle. But as predominantly the way that people consume media has changed, and of course even more so during the pandemic, so much more digital media, so much more media is now traded digitally, programmatically as well. That's all changing, which is wonderful, but there's still a lot of work to do with regards to how we change the advertiser perceptions and how we pigeonhole media for different jobs within that marketing funnel. So I'm joined today by Rob Gold from Merkle B2B. The man has fire in his belly, fire in his head. He's a wonderful human being, done really well in this industry, came from very humble beginnings. First job, worked on a milk float. I made sandwiches, so between us, we've done all right. But I want to chat to Rob today a little bit about how his clients have evolved from those kind of performance-related metrics and really taking advantage of attention and what that means for him and his clients. So, first of all, I want to do a bit of a show of hands. During the pandemic, whose media consumption habits have changed dramatically and are likely to change for the good? Yeah, I think that's an easy one. So what have you seen in terms of all of the data that you have, Rob, and around media consumption, ultimately, what's that going to mean for brands?
Well, okay, everyone hear me okay? Okay. Well, thanks, Anna, for having me. Also, this is the first time in about 18 months I haven't worn flip-flops and shorts and I'm having a stinker because it's really hot here. But yeah, this whole discussion is really interesting. I said it to someone earlier on today that every single person has been impacted in the same way, which is a really kind of bizarre experience that I can't quite get my head around. But as a result, I think the way that I certainly think about the role of media and consumption, you have to start with audiences. And you think, well, everybody's consumption has shifted. And it hasn't necessarily changed where it was already heading, in my opinion. I think we're all kind of going into this addressable platform where you're listening to more stuff and going on social platforms. But it really has accelerated everybody. And I think the challenge with that is that the role for brands becomes more and more difficult, because you only have to look at the stock prices of Amazon and Facebook to know where eyeballs are going. And as a result, if you're a brand builder, it's really difficult to build a brand in the way that you used to build a brand. So therefore, this whole discussion of digital formats and creativity I think it comes to the fore because you have to think totally differently now than what you used to do. So if you're trying to build a brand, Ian was talking about the role of TV and reach earlier on, but actually you have to think about what people are consuming in a post-COVID world, and I think that means that things are really different. So it's not about approaching brand building in the way that we used to. I think you start with audiences, you look at consumption behaviour, and you build and use the right platform that does that job for you, rather than default to thinking, telly does this thing and a digital display ad does this thing over here. So things are different. You start with audiences, and I'm certainly excited about the evolution of how we're going to approach certain things that we do.
Have you seen significant changes in media consumption that varies by age at all?
So inevitably, I think younger generations have had significant differences. If you were born after early 90s, you've never grown up without the red dot on your phone or without buying stuff on Amazon. So there's an element of just natural behaviour. But I've always thought about people like my grandparents. They've got broadband and a 50-inch TV screen, and my granddad or my grandma's on Instagram. And you think, so it's not just the domain of the young anymore. And I think that's my point around you can't really put channels in buckets and audiences because so much has shifted.
So how does that impact that change with regards to different audiences? How does that impact media buying? And you've definitely got people making decisions at the very top about how their ad dollars are spent, but ultimately, are they connected well? Do they understand younger audiences in particular?
So I think so. I mean, this was all about, I represent a group of technology businesses and brands under the guise of a B2B company. And the really interesting thing about that is that the sort of technology companies have come to the fore over the last 18 months. You think about Teams, and you think about Zoom, and you think about even the fact that every single business has to spin themselves up onto the cloud, which means that actually your audience journey and the messages you give to people are so different now. And as a media planner, it's a really interesting thing to do, because you say, well, there's a decision maker, or there's a lady or an 18-year-old, and those people all have fundamentally different journeys. And therefore, as a practitioner in our industry, you have to think about that person, the journey we're on, and then the role that media can play to do the old adage of serving the right message at the right time. And I think that's where technology plays such a massive role now, because you can not only serve an ad, but you can also change an ad. And I was even listening to the guy from Snapchat earlier on talking about the role of augmented reality in retail, and you think that's just a whole another area of an audience insight, another consumption habit around it that you have to consider now. So getting your head around it, and the people that I work with, we're sort of thinking about, well, how do you continue to evolve your thinking in this space? Because it's really difficult to be able to navigate the entire industry and the ecosystem. So I think that's where people like you guys are really fantastic, because you bring a load of skill set and a load of knowledge that helps marketeers and agencies really make the most of the opportunity that's in front of them.
So I think there's something that we want to get across. We have a big mantra around the fact that digital is so massive now, and there are so many channels that are being digitized as well. But digital still has this old school mentality of being a performance thing. How do we help the industry as a whole start to segment digital better, specifically around as a brand building tool? What has changed? What's stopped us historically that now will enable us to? I mean, Lumen obviously being, a key part of that, right?
Yeah. So I mean, it's we touched on it earlier on. I think you've got to stop thinking, because things have changed. You've got to stop thinking about how things used to work, and you have to. We start with audiences, and you think, what are these people doing, and then you build your plan around that. So let's say you've got a insight that there's a 28-year-old who we're trying to reach to sell cat food or to buy a car, and you think, well, looking at what they consume, rather than say surfing the telly ad.
Yeah.
So you'd start off and you'd say, well, these people are all over social platforms. They're using Snap to consider different products and services. They are listening to a podcast on the way to whatever it might be. So how do you infiltrate that as a brand journey? And then if you take that specific question of it's not about a digital format. It's are people consuming content in a publishing world, en masse? And therefore you create, I think anyway, your awareness plan with those touch points in mind, based on the new type of consumption behaviour, rather than say, and again, the guy from Facebook was talking about this, you sort of put things in buckets, and I respectfully disagree with that, because I think that's just not the right thing to do. So you have an objective, you have a audience insight in mind, and you overlay consumption behaviour. So again, to be specific about your question, I think you need to re-educate and reframe the way that you think about what you're trying to do in a world of connected touch points that exist now. And if you're in a world where you're still going, I don't know, digital display is for driving conversion, driving a sale, I think you're sort of in the wrong place really, because actually there are so many different platforms now that can offer so many different ways to market. Start with your audience, understand what they're consuming, and then your channel is simply a way of activating that strategy.
There are some very large entities though in the media industry that are quite happy with their little ring-fence bit of budget. And obviously that's what we've kind of got to break down and challenge as an industry. So what would be your recommendations to advertising agencies about how to go about that change?
Well, you only have to look at the Ozone Project, which is the collection of publishers. I can't remember the name of the TV, but Channel 4, ITV and Sky all came together. And I think that actually there's probably a role for premium platforms like yourselves and others to come together, and rather than trying to steal a bit of share off each other, is grow the industry. And if you grow the industry and you've got the right products and service, you'll grow your share. And I think otherwise it's just a race to the bottom of, the reality is you do things as probably better, but in a similar scheme to other people. And I think there's an opportunity to educate people, because the more difficult thing is changing people's opinions. And my point before of, just saying, well, telly does this and search does that, it's sort of like the wrong thing. So I think my counsel would be get together as a group and try and change the agenda, so rather than just change someone's opinion.
So there's obviously lots of things going on. I know that there's been a delay in the third-party cookie deprecation, but I guess coming from a programmatic background that I've had for the last sort of 5 or 6 years, I feel like there's been a whole load of levers that we've kind of neglected in digital for a long time, and obviously one of them is the creative side of things. Merkle do an amazing job of bringing creative and media together very closely. Tell me a little bit more about that and why you've had so much success there.
Yeah, of course. So for those of you who don't know, so Merkle as a business is all about customer experience management. So that is everything from your data strategy, deploying CRM, analytics to power kind of a universal view of the customer, and all the kind of technology platforms that exist within that. Merkle B2B, the group that I represent, sits within that, but what we've done 6 months ago now, but it's been 2 years in the making, is brought together different capability sets. So within our group, we have a media business, we have a creative agency, we have a research business, and then we have all of that good stuff that I just mentioned about Merkle, and we bring it together under one offering. And the reason we do that, and the thing that I say to people, is just making the really complicated quite simple, because all this stuff about connected customer journeys is really difficult to do. It's very easy to put on a PowerPoint slide. So we brought together a group of companies. We have successfully evolved a lot of our relationships with our clients to be much more multi-service line now, because frankly we can say, hey, that creative problem over there that you have, we can do that for you, integrate it into your media connections plan, and make it much more simple. And I think the tricky thing about the world that we're talking about now, and my Snap example is a good one, is it's just something else to consider. It's totally the right thing to do, but how are you possibly going to do all these things? And I think what we're striving to do is to try and take that complexity away by bringing best part of 200 people together with lots of different disciplines to create connected experiences. And it's very difficult.
I was about to say, it sounds really easy.
No, it's very difficult. But it's just a simple case, I think, of just getting people together, create integrated teams, and if you've always got the right solution in mind, we are here to solve clients' issues and challenges, and our services help that. And if you spin that the other way, that's when you're on the hiding to nothing, I think. So that's the journey we're on anyway.
Yeah. I mean, we talked a little bit around incentive structures as well, and making sure that everyone's aligned from the top down, being quite an integral part of that. How hard was that, I guess?
Actually not that difficult for us. So we, transparently, we run one P&L across those however many agencies that we have together. And what it means is and this is generally what happens, if one of our clients comes and says, hey, there's something we need over here, or a problem we've got over there, then we're able to make a decision as a composite rather than say that's not going to work for our creative business. And my experience of doing this so far with this group is that if you do the right thing and you help solve that problem, actually the growth comes underneath that, and everyone wins then. The client wins because they're getting the right solution, we're able to build our business, and we're able to do better work, which is kind of what I guess this is all about.
So you did touch on the fact that it would be a nice idea to have digital brand building entities like InSkin come together and help educate the market and, you know, push for having our own ring fence area of media plans, what would be the value for agencies and for advertisers of us doing something like that?
Well, I think it just makes it easier. So, I mean, that's kind of my entire life, whether it's with my 2 kids or whether it's in my professional life, I just want a more simple life. And, you know, my point earlier on, if you're a media planner now or you're a brand marketeer, you've got so much choice. And it's very, very difficult to navigate and therefore do the things that we know that we should all be doing. So it would be wonderful if we're able to speak to less people about a solution to an issue, take awareness for my audiences. And my point earlier on is then the solution becomes your service rather than people are trying to sell their platform or their channel, because that just feels very tactical, frankly. So if you're able to come together, make it a bit easier for us to navigate.
So education is
everything,
giving more benchmarking, making it normalised.
And have it around the solutions we're all trying to face. Not about CPM, but about I'm trying to build my brand, I'm trying to drive my consideration, I'm trying to connect my customer journeys together. Hey, presto, look at what I can give to you as a result. And I think that is, the way that as everyone reverts back to integrated models, I think anyway, that's really the reason people are doing it, is because there's too much choice, everything's really quite complicated, and it's very difficult to navigate. So trying to make it a bit more simple, I think, is totally the case. And actually, it's like the iceberg thing, isn't it? All the technology exists underneath that iceberg now to allow you to do data-driven, connected customer experiences, but you just need a little bit of help to navigate over the top.
Yeah, okay. Right, 2 last quick questions because we're running out of time. You're a very positive person with an amazing sort of can-do attitude, and we obviously want to change and improve things. What's, I guess, the biggest challenge around changing perceptions of digital as a brand building tool and helping brands?
Well, thanks for the compliment.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's true. Biggest challenges to overcome. I think I've really touched on it already. We live in a world where we all overcomplicate everything. You know, I'm pleased we haven't got slides today because that's another complication that everybody has to do. And I think to successfully take the advantage of all the amazing things that sit underneath digital advertising, I think it needs to be much more single-mindedly focused about the job that you're trying to deliver on and the outcome you're trying to drive. And then actually, as a result, I believe naturally the partner or the platform will come to the fore of why that solution is there. So I think it's just be solution-oriented.
Fine, you've answered my next question in a way. What's your prediction for how this might evolve in the next 2 or 3 years?
I think free advertising is all about frequencies, and say the same thing over and over again. Make it easy, make it simple, and I think that is a massive thing. Less choice, focus more on simplicity, and I think also the other thing I mentioned to you when we were chatting about this was I'm a massive believer in sort of head and heart. So we work in our place anyway as a bit of a consensus. So we, half the time you sort of know you want to do something, but you get stuck in the rut of not being able to do it. You've got to over-justify it or waste time creating business cases. And I think there's always an element of that that's needed. But I think, think there's something that you should do. Speak to a group of people that you trust and have some faith in, and just go with it. And my experience anyway is that that's been it's been a model that I would advocate time and time again.
Fine. All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time. Cheers, Mike.